I was told by the manager, I'll take credit for this. I was told this by a pale-looking female employee who had just returned from a $5 million business dispute with the management. And you return without saying anything at all. You've put in a lot of effort for this. Actually, this isn't the first time. What? It's not the initial instance. In the final stages of several big deals, the manager has stepped in and taken over. Why haven't you spoken up? As a single mother, I work fewer hours. Occasionally, I have to abruptly take a break. I already put in less hours at work, and it would be difficult for me to continue if I disobeyed the management. My patience broke as her comments brought back the brightness in her eyes when she expressed how much she enjoyed her profession. I mumbled, "This is unacceptable," as I reached for a contact on my smartphone. I made the decision to address this unfair treatment of such a gifted person with rage. I'm Mark, and I'm 40 years old. I had spent many years working for foreign companies before joining FunToy, a toy maker, a month ago. With 35 years of experience, FunToy is a mid-sized corporation renowned for its reliable performance and premium educational toys. It hasn't created any huge hits, but it has created a lot of toys that are beloved for a long time. Negotiations with foreign companies have increased recently, and we are beginning to broaden our market and establish ourselves as a global business. Well, here is the situation. Is there a problem? While I was having trouble with the document I was turning in, Barbara, who was seated behind me, politely interrupted. Barbara has been with the company for 3 years and is very helpful. She constantly responds to my inquiries without even the slightest sign of irritation, even offering advice, whether they are about customer information or the specifics of expenditure reports. She's a single mother with fewer hours worked, therefore she's gotten good at handling things. About this document. Barbara took the document and carefully went over how to fill it out with me. So, you check this box here and fill in this section. I see. I understand. Mark, you're a quick study. Please ask at any moment. Thank you. Barbara smiled kindly and warmly back at me when I thanked her for her explanation. Naturally, I smiled back at her, but the serene calm was abruptly disrupted by a loud cry. What the hell are you planning to do with this kind of content? Chris, the sales manager, was speaking. Chris has worked in sales his entire career, and although he holds a managerial position, he is a vibrant individual who actively makes sales calls. He consistently achieves the highest sales results, and maybe as a result, he is quite demanding at work. I think every person in our sales department is incredibly talented and of the highest caliber. Working with them has never been an unpleasant experience for me, and I've never heard any complaints from clients. I guess because he is so passionate about his work, he is strict even about the smallest mistakes, which is why I frequently wonder why he needs to get so upset. The manager is being tough today too. Yes, he is. Barbara gave a nod, looked away, and got back to work. The manager's irate voice rang out once more the following day as I was making my way back to my desk. Seriously, why didn't you double-check this? Barbara was standing in front of the manager's desk when I turned to look over there. I'm sorry. What is this negotiation, in your opinion? We don't give someone who isn't really committed this kind of deal. I automatically scowled at Chris's domineering tone. Based on my observations over the previous month, Barbara is a highly skilled professional who never takes shortcuts. Our clientele think highly of her, and she manages things with integrity. How was she half committed, according to him? We have someone in the sales department working fewer hours. Do you not believe you should be a little more devoted to us? I'm truly sorry. For heaven's sake. Whenever an issue arises, it's usually related to your child getting sick or something else. More awareness of how much you're interfering with work is necessary. We are not a charity that houses the worthless. Gather yourself. Chris spit out his last remarks and walked out after berating Barbara. Barbara went back to her workstation and gently replaced the documents in the file, bowing her head. She seemed abnormally dejected, but I was too busy with an upcoming meeting to check on her. I went back to my desk after completing my morning work and called out to Barbara, who was opening her lunchbox next to me. She still had an angry expression on her face after the manager's rant. Barbara spotted me and immediately tried to hide her expression. Earlier, Chris really got on your nerves. Are you all right? You saw that. Barbara nervously looked away from me and then smiled modestly. I'm doing OK. The manager was simply pointing out an error that was included in the presentation materials for the upcoming discussion. Wait, he yelled at you like that over a typo. I was surprised, but not surprised at how insignificant the cause was. It was astonishing to me that he had to yell at me for a single error in a paper that wasn't even urgent. Since it's an important presentation for a big negotiation, I think the manager just got a bit strict. You don't have to take everything the manager says to heart, I informed her. It's not that they're continuing to employ you in spite of your less hours. It's because they genuinely want you to work here, even in a part-time capacity. What, Mark? Barbara, from what I've observed, you're remarkable. I believe that because they are willing to work with your fewer hours in the sales department, they value you. Thus, you ought to take pride in your efforts. I appreciate your support. Now that I'm feeling a little better, Barbara turned to smile at me. Actually, it looks like we might secure a contract with Avina in the next negotiation. Wow, that is incredible. Avina is a global toy retailer with a significant global presence. If we win this contract, the upscale toy store, which is favored by celebrities all around the world, could bring in over $5 million in sales annually. I've been working on this project for a very long time. It's finally coming together, and I'm really delighted. It's amazing that you were able to close with them, Barbara. You really are exceptional. Oh, that's not how it works. It was quite difficult to go this far. Still, you're almost done sealing the deal. You ought to feel pleased with yourself. Thank you, Barbara said with a beaming, happy smile. But isn't it tough managing reduced hours while taking care of your child? I have to give my child my everything. In addition, I adore my work, Barbara remarked, her eyes glistening. I find it really enjoyable to consider how parents will feel when choosing products for their children or how kids will respond when they pick them up, and to figure out how to make that experience the best it can be. Thus, it isn't a hardship. However, I saw a brief shadow move across her face. If anything comes up, I'm here to talk, though I'm still learning from you most of the time. With her characteristically soft grin, Barbara remarked, No, I'm glad I can rely on you, Mark, with all your international experience. The day of Barbara's contract signing with Avina eventually arrived, 1 week later. So, today's the big day, right? Yes, Barbara happily grinned back at me. Hey, Barbara. I was going to wish her well when I heard Chris's voice. Yes, manager. Today is the day of the Avina contract, right? Yes, it's a major deal with a big company. I don't feel comfortable leaving it entirely to you, so I'm coming along. But. What? Do you have an issue with that? The supervisor scowled at Barbara, perhaps daring her to object. What happens if you receive a call to pick up your child in the middle of the negotiation? You'll leave a void if you're by alone, don't you? Will you squander a $5 million transaction? Well, and what happens if the talks continue after your workday? You'll cause everyone inconvenience in the end. After hearing the manager's stern remarks, I was forced to speak out. In that case, I'll step in, I remarked. Barbara has put everything together meticulously, so she should be able to handle any unforeseen situations. What's up, Mark? Are you attempting to interrupt me? That is not my goal. Simply put, I believe that someone with experience working with clients from abroad would be better able to adjust in case something unforeseen occurs. So you're saying I can't handle international clients, is that it? That's not what I meant. So don't poke your nose into it. Chris angrily told me, "You're still a rookie in our sales department," and turned back to Barbara. "Do you think Mark would be better?" Barbara said to the manager, "No, I feel more secure with you coming along," and the manager nodded as though to acknowledge her statement. "Come on, let's go." Barbara. I saw her hurry after the manager as he firmly marched out. Why is the manager taking the lead? I noticed that I was speaking my mind. I was under the impression that Barbara was the one handling this deal, so I was curious as to why the manager, despite his position, had to become involved. However, I had assumed that Barbara would still receive the credit, and anything should work out as long as Chris, the top-performing sales manager, is present. But 30 minutes later, just Barbara showed up again, looking completely exhausted. "Barbara, isn't it a bit early for the contract to be done?" Surprised, I asked. Barbara looked up at me slowly, her face pallid. "The manager said he'd take all the credit," she retorted in a shaking voice. "What?" To get to the Avena branch, the manager and I took a taxi. I gave him the final presentation materials when he asked to examine them on the way. Then he assured me I could just go back when we got there. He stated he would take all the credit when I questioned what he meant. "Right?" Barbara gave my words a nod. "And you return without saying anything at all. You put in a lot of effort to get this contract." "Actually, this isn't the first time." "What? It's not the first time, is it?" "There have been several other times when he stepped in at the final stage of major deals." "Why haven't you reported this?" "I'm a single mom working reduced hours." "That's irrelevant, Barbara. You've been producing outcomes. However, since I already work less hours and occasionally need to take unexpected leaves, people don't always perceive me favorably. I'll face even greater challenges at work if I disagree with a manager." My patience broke at her comments, which brought back the memory of her brilliant eyes and her intense devotion for her work. I mumbled, "This is unacceptable," as I took out my phone and tapped on a contact. "It's me, yeah, that's right." I told the person on the other end of the call what was going on and gave them my full trust to handle it. Upon hearing their assured, "Leave it to me," I said, hanging up the phone and grinning at Barbara, who seemed puzzled, "It's all taken care of, Mark." I said, "You'll see soon enough," and kept making calls. The corridor reverberated with the sound of rushed footsteps. "Barbara." Chris yelled and rushed in. "The $5 million contract was recently called off. Something must have gone wrong with you." I took no action at all. Simply don't lie. I moved between Barbara and the manager just as he was ready to charge at her. "I'm the one who called off the negotiation." "What? What just did you say?" Chris was taken aback by my statements for a brief moment, but his cheeks flushed red as soon as he realized. "How come you have the authority to do that? And why do you have the right to appropriate the successes of your subordinates?" He paused and swallowed his words as I gently responded. "I've heard that you've claimed credit for Barbara's work before. Why then do you have the authority to do that? No matter how prominent you are or how far you've traveled abroad, you're still just a stuck-up jerk." Chris grabbed me by the collar and yelled, "I've hated that smug, I know all about the world look on your face from the start. That's not my intention. That's how it appears to me anyway. That's not my insecurity about having traveled abroad. That's yours. Don't include me in it." Though no one else in the sales department seemed to be put off by my foreign background, I had thought that Chris felt a little inferior to me. The fact that the other team members eagerly sought me out and wanted to absorb my knowledge just served to emphasize how capable they were. If you were as proactive as the other employees, I would have respected you as well. "What did you say?" A voice burst out just as the manager clamped down on my collar. "What do you think you're doing?" Suddenly, one of Funtoy's executives entered the room. "Chris, give him up." Are you aware of his identity? He's only a novice. A novice, he's new, but I know he's been working abroad. It makes sense that a superior would offer some educational advice as an American businessman. Taking hold of him by the collar. Is that how you define guidance? He is also the incoming CEO and the son of the president, just so you know. What? I seized the chance to shake off the manager's hand and adjust my collar as his grasp relaxed. The son of the president? My mother's maiden name was Mark. Mark Miller is my true name. I decided to go by this name instead of that because if I went by that name, everyone would know I'm connected to the president. If this was perceived as misleading, I sincerely regret. I bowed slightly and apologized. Mark is destined to succeed as CEO. He gained knowledge and made contacts by working at foreign companies after graduating from Oxford. Now, he's back to assume the position of the company's future CEO. Chris was given a brief overview of my background by the executive. After he was done, I turned to ask Chris a question. Manager, you knew I had returned from overseas, but were you aware of my previous job? My previous job? After graduating from university, I worked at Avena. What did you say? At the U.S. branch, I worked closely with a colleague. I gave them an explanation of the circumstances and requested a brief suspension of the contract. But even if you are the president's son, are you out of your mind to emotionally cancel a $5 million deal? Based on the shift in his countenance, it appeared that he recognized his harsh behavior could have major repercussions. Nevertheless, it demonstrated how cunning Chris could be as he attempted to place the responsibility on me. Such justifications, however, would be ineffective here. The contract wasn't canceled by me. Since the original person in charge was not handling the contract, I just requested them to put it on hold. Barbara will handle the finalization of the contract tomorrow. She was the one who began working on it right away. What? Barbara, is that all right with you? Barbara was standing motionless, trying to make sense of what was happening when I cried out to her. Yes, of course. I nodded in response to her answer and returned my attention to Chris. Do you know why I was able to work here under a different name? Chris looked up at me, clearly taken aback. I made the decision to give him a comprehensive explanation. I informed my dad that I wanted to get familiar with the daily operations before I joined the management team. He replied by asking me to look into the reason behind the high turnover rate in the sales department. I looked at Chris, who was starting to perspire a lot. Additionally, he requested me to see if other staff members were actually making a difference, or if the sales manager was the only one managing the majority of the big contracts. I have, therefore, been discreetly researching throughout. Well, we now know who wasn't really doing their job because of this most recent event. I kindly ask everyone to assist with the interviews since we will be initiating an internal investigation. I spoke to the staff members nearby before turning back to Chris, who was now focusing on the ground. All right, Chris, the interview will begin with you. My father and the other executives are waiting. Come on, let's go. I smiled and took the manager by the arm as he shook. Following an internal investigation, it was discovered that Chris had been taking credit for contracts he had previously helped Barbara with, even as he had done with hers on multiple occasions. It was discovered that Chris had been defrauding his subordinates of credit ever since he was promoted to sales manager. Many talented workers left the company as a result of his behavior, as they could not put up with it. Chris was an incompetent but good at sucking up staff members, and he bullied those who could do better, forcing them to resign. He allegedly said to these workers, "Your promotion depends on your sincerity," and demanded costly presents, like his wine and meat, from them on special occasions to show his appreciation. That's how I got promoted to manager, he even boasted, demonstrating how ingrained his behavior had become. As soon as these workers realized that Chris was failing, they all began to expose his behavior, which further demonstrated how unrespected he was by his teammates. How could such flagrant policy infractions within the organization have gone unreported for so long? After more research, it was discovered that Chris had been paying the HR manager, a former senior in college, with women and beer to bury complaints from subordinates and departing workers. Trapped in this scenario, the sales department employees could do nothing but put up with it until they could take no more, at which point they left, starting a vicious cycle. Chris's selfish actions caused him to lose valuable talent, which was a serious problem. Chris was fired from Funtoy when his actions eventually attracted the attention of the company's upper management. He was demoted to a regular employee, and the HR manager was held accountable for his conduct. I'll see to it that the gifted individuals who are still here are protected. So, the day after that occurrence, as I was eating my lunch, I remarked to Barbara, "Don't hesitate to tell me if anything comes up." After dealing with Avener skillfully, Barbara was able to negotiate a $5 million contract. Later, a close colleague of mine informed me that the agreement was finalized because Barbara's professionalism and sincerity were valued by Avener's officials. Therefore, Barbara, you have no reason to feel bad about working less hours. Actually, you ought to get credit for finishing tasks faster than others, I remarked. I'm grateful. It is a great honor for me to have my work acknowledged and to have such positive feedback. I'd also want to hear your comments because, as a mother, your viewpoint is vital for product planning. I continued. As she ate her lunch next to me, Barbara said, "Absolutely," with a radiant smile. Mr. Miller, what are your plans from here?" she inquired. "For the time being, I'll remain in the sales division. I've only recently arrived, so I still have a lot to learn about the daily operations, so I'll be depending on you guys," I answered. "That's good to hear. I see." I took a sip of my green tea from my bottle and remarked, "Likewise, Barbara, I'm sincerely thankful to have someone as capable as you on the team." Our competitors have heard about this recent occurrence, and Funtoy's reputation has suffered a little. To regain that image, we'll need to highlight our transparent and sincere approach going forward. Above all, when kids pick up our toys, we need to make sure Funtoy is a brand we can be proud of. I promise to see to it that we accomplish that. I want to guide us toward a better future while continuing to value gifted individuals like Barbara. I'll be the one to expand Funtoy into even